Okay. Turn it over to you, Matt.
Thank you, Chairman Bell. Senators, like Mr. Gentry, you're probably picking up, I am not a native Californian. I'm from Ireland, but I've lived in the Bay Area for 20 years, and for most of that time I've worked on housing policy, and for the last 8 years I've worked for an organization called the Bay Area Council. We represent about 300 of the Bay Area's largest employers, both public and private, and we work on issues of public policy concern to our members, and for each of the last, I think, 3 years in our annual member surveys, they've told us that housing is their #1 issue of concern. The lack of affordable housing, particularly for workforce, is what's keeping them awake at night. Our companies are not expanding in the Bay Area. They're moving offshore, out of state, to other parts of the country with growth, and it's really having an impact, particularly at the lower end of the income scale. Lower income jobs are definitely being moved out of California. I do have a slide presentation, so I'm going to need that screen. But I do want to draw your attention, and I have to apologize. I forgot to send my bio into the staff, so it's not in your materials. But there is reference to a report that we published just about a month ago, a roadmap for economic resilience. And there's a chapter. The first chapter of that report is about housing, and the author of, in large part of that chapter, is here with me today, Denise Pinkston, who co-chairs the Bay Area Council's Housing Committee. And Denise is someone who works in development. She builds housing for a living, and she has, I would love for certainly you, Senator Allen, and certainly Senator Bell and others to chat with her at some point. She's got a great presentation on the nexus between market rate development and inclusionary ordinances, how they work together and sometimes not work together. But Denise would be very happy to come talk to you about that at some point.
Is the answer that it depends on how it's structured?
It depends, yes. It kills some market rate developments, and some depending on the metrics of the project, some work. I think the LAO's report, which is referenced in your documents, looked at census tracts in the Bay Area. They compared similar census tracts, high-income census tracts that had inclusionary ordinances compared to those next door that did not. And there was no appreciable difference in the production of affordable units between the two census tracts. So there was some production, but also some drop-off. So I think it's something we need to look at very carefully as a tool. In the Bay Area, we support a lot of, as you'll see in our report, a lot of certainly what Professor Galante described to you as tools and changes that need to take place in housing policy. We're in the middle of a crisis, and we need to act today. Not in 8 to 10 years. If you create a bond or a funding source or a tax credit and you give it to an affordable developer and they go out to the market and look for sites and try to get a project entitled. Oh, there goes my screen again. There are gremlins in the building. That's going to take several years for those units to come to market, and that misses the next whole cycle, the whole development cycle, and we need housing today. So we decided to look at potential opportunities. How do we create affordable housing in a very, very timely fashion at low cost? Currently in the Bay Area, we're not doing it. We're failing perhaps more than even in LA. We're creating levels of housing production similar to the Rust Belt, Cleveland, Buffalo, places like that. And we're the hottest economy in the world. We are producing affordable housing, but we're producing it in the Central Valley. If you look at the city of Lathrop, they're producing, that's probably the single largest housing development in Northern California, 12,500 single-family homes being marketed as a short commute to Silicon Valley. As I like to say, development follows the path of least resistance, and almond orchards don't file CEQA lawsuits, so that's where our affordable housing is going. So we're looking at a potential, and I'm sorry that Senator Witkowski couldn't stay for this because this is exactly what he was talking about earlier, but we're looking at solutions to bring product to market as soon as possible in the next 12 to 18 to 24 months. Accessory dwelling units. Accessory dwelling units are Second units on the lot of a single-family home, they can be either in the backyard or they can be within the existing envelope of a single-family home. They're environmentally friendly, they're low cost. A standalone cottage-type accessory dwelling unit maxes out at about $200,000 compared to in the Bay Area, one unit of affordable housing costs about $500,000 to build. These can go down as low as $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 for an in-house conversion of an unused bedroom, for example, to add a small kitchen. They're invisible, gentle density. These will be constructed within existing neighborhoods, single-family home residential areas, and they help homeowners in many instances stay in their homes that they may be, as we had a conversation earlier about folks who are having challenges. Oh, thank you for joining us, Senator. This is certainly at your behest. These units generate income sources for a lot of families that may be having difficulty making mortgage payments and staying in their homes. In the Bay Area, we've had a number of cities already pass ordinances making it easier for homeowners to construct accessory dwelling units. Santa Cruz, Berkeley, and Oakland, for example, have all recently passed ADU-enabling legislation. In the Bay Area, in the 9 counties of the Bay Area, there are about 1.5 million single-family homes currently. If just 10% of those homeowners built an ADU, that's 150,000 units of affordable by design housing. These units also are more energy efficient. They use less water. Again, they tend to be in existing neighborhoods adjacent to transit. So they tick all the boxes of pretty much every state objective that we're trying to achieve. They also address some changing demographic factors that we're experiencing as a society. Most of our existing single-family home stock was built in the 50s, 60s, 70s to house, the traditional nuclear family. Those families are the minority these days. We have a lot of single-parent families, a lot of extended families, families that need additional space for grandparents, etc. So they're a lot more flexible than a traditional single-family unit home, and allow families to adapt to changing circumstances. They also allow families to adapt to changing economic circumstances. If they lose a job, for example, they have that additional income coming in. They can get through a gap and maybe missing a paycheck for a few months, having that income steady and available. Also, as you can see, they're rented to different sectors. About 25% would be family and friends. That's kids coming home from college who can't afford Bay Area rents. 38% is just a stranger, a renter. Some use them for home offices, studios. Work from home is a growing phenomena. And then sometimes the homeowner actually moves into the ADU and rents out the existing residence. We have a peculiar phenomena in the Bay Area, but in California as a whole, we've got these Prop 13 prisoners, seniors living in very large homes that they can't afford to move out of. I think I saw data recently that Marin is the most overhoused county in the United States of America. They've got more empty bedrooms per capita than any other county. So you've got all of this unused housing stock that we should be bringing back into the marketplace and using. Karen Chappell, who's sort of the thought leader in a lot of the ADU movement, she is a professor at UC Berkeley. In her research, she shows that in the Bay Area, if we got rid of a lot of the impediments that currently stand in the way of ADUs, 31% of single-family homeowners would consider building one of these units. A recent study was done in the Cascadia region as well, looking at Vancouver, Seattle, and Portland to look at their respective ADU rules and regulations. Vancouver has probably the model for a big city on the West Coast. This number is actually 500 building permits for external ADUs. They also do 500 units a year internal. So you're looking at 1,000 units of housing in a city with only 100,000 units of housing total. So it's a huge supply for the city of Vancouver. 35% of single-family homes in the city of Vancouver have ADUs.
Accessory dwelling unit.
So if you get the legislation right, if you remove the impediments and create the incentives, you create a huge source of affordable housing. If you get it wrong, like Seattle, if you get it wrong, like Portland, if you get it wrong, like a lot of cities in California, you get nothing. And Senator Bell, I did a little back of the napkin math for you. You mentioned at the start of the hearing that Santa Clara County needs 67,000 units of affordable housing.
That's about right.
There are 342,000 single-family homes in Santa Clara County. If 20% of single-family homeowners in Santa Clara County built an ADU, you'd get 68,000 units of affordable by design housing.
Half of Vancouver. That's all you gotta do.
Half of Vancouver, yes. So what are the problems? Why are we not doing more of these? As you know, the state of California already has ADU enabling legislation. The problem with that legislation, it gives local jurisdictions the authority to set the standards. We want you to do these, but you get to go and set, what the setbacks are, what the parking minimums are, fees, etc. So yes, so they obviously set a lot of cities are setting the standards at a level where it's just too problematic, too expensive, too time consuming for homeowners to do these. So with slight tweaks to, as Oakland has done, as Berkeley has done, Santa Cruz has done, you can really make a huge difference in the number of these units that you can bring to market in a very short order. This particular graphic shows the city of El Cerrito in the East Bay. And this is just if you get rid of their onerous parking requirements. I think it's a minimum of 2 off-site parking spots for a single-family home with an ADU. That's the report. You've got it, Karen Chappell's report. If you get rid of that, you look at, that's a diagram that shows the difference in the number of ADUs that you will get. Some of the other barriers that are put in the way are lot sizes, setbacks, but parking tends to be the biggest one. And I think, if we're trying to achieve our climate change objectives under SB 375, there really shouldn't be a parking requirement for an ADU that's within half a mile of fixed transit. The City of Oakland, in their recent legislation, removed parking requirements for half a mile within fixed transit and major bus intersections. So theirs is very forward-thinking. We also need to look at the process and the fees that are charged that are a disincentive to homeowners. So what would we like the state to do? What can the state do to make these a real, an immediate supply of affordable housing? Declare ADUs an accessory use. They're not an additional use. They're not an apartment. One of the problems with ADUs is in a lot of jurisdictions, they're viewed as apartments. And if you have an apartment, you need sprinklers. Costs $20,000 to put sprinklers in that ADU. That kills the project. That kills that unit of affordable housing.
Is that Romex or straight metal pipe? What kind of pipe?
Not sure what the pipe, but I think Karen Chappell had to, this is her ADU. I think this is in her yard, and she had to put sprinklers in, and it cost her $20,000.
Okay.
Wow. What we would really like to see is ADUs approved with a building permit ministerially, so that the neighbors can't line up with their pitchforks and their flaming torches and say no. We would also like to see work with the utilities on having dual hookups. They should be able to tee into the primary residence utilities, because we're not, in many instances, we're not increasing the density of the neighborhood. We're looking at large single-family homes that don't have as I say, the traditional single-family nuclear family unit in it. And there a lot of empty bedrooms, so we're not really increasing the density to any degree. So they should ordinarily not require additional parking or additional utility needs. And certainly, the sprinklers, I think, is a rational fix that we can all agree needs to take place. Basically, that's the end of my presentation. But I think. Two points to close. The very first presenters were talking about foreclosure and the impact that previous lending practices and the housing cycles had in low-income communities. This is foreclosure insurance. We're working with groups in LA who are looking at maintaining community stability in Latino communities by allowing families to construct ADUs so that they can stay in their communities and have a guaranteed revenue source. And I think to your concern about general fund impacts, Senator Bell, this is a huge supply of affordable housing with zero impact on the general fund.
Yeah, right.
It doesn't require a single dollar of public subsidy. So that's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Kevin?
Well, thank you, Chairman Jim Bell, for inviting me to speak on this panel and to this committee for holding this important hearing on solutions to affordable housing. I'm honored to be here on behalf of Housing Trust Silicon Valley to talk about the role that we play and that other local housing trust funds play with the state's assistance in working on the affordable housing crisis. Just a little bit of background on the Housing Trust. We were created in 2000 with an innovative mission to serve as a catalyst for new affordable housing by raising new funds from the public and private sectors. This was a true public-private partnership. The Housing Trust started when the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors, of which Chairman Bell was a member at the time, approved a $1 million challenge grant and then asked the private sector to match it. Led by the efforts then of Silicon Valley Leadership Group, our business community met that goal and then set a higher one. And by 2003, the Housing Trust had raised $20 million, including $1 million donations from some of the leading employers in our region, including at the time Adobe, HP, Sun, Cisco, and Applied Materials, in addition to having all 16 local jurisdictions contribute as well. Today, the Housing Trust continues with this model. Since 2000, we have raised over $100 million for our community, assisting in the creation or preservation of over 13,500 affordable homes, and assisting more than 24,000 people find a home in one of the least affordable regions in the world. There are two really unique aspects to the Housing Trust. The first, how our programs income the community, and then second, how we raise funds to meet our mission. So the first of that, the impact. We have three program areas: affordable rental housing, home ownership, and then homelessness. With affordable rental housing, the Housing Trust focuses on that early stage of affordable housing development, that challenging time when affordable housing developers need access to capital to compete in a red-hot real estate market to help them acquire key development sites or buildings that need preservation. We make loans to developers to acquire land or buildings, and then when they start construction, they pay us back, and we're able to revolve those funds to make new loans to help other developers. And then since our inception, we've lent more than $55 million to assist in the creation or preservation of more than 5,000 affordable rental homes in Silicon Valley and our region. To promote home ownership, the Housing Trust makes loans for down payment assistance. In most other parts of the country, an individual or a couple with good paying jobs can rent a home for a few years and then save up their down payment for when they want to buy a home, but not in Silicon Valley and many parts of California. With rents over $3,000 for a two-bedroom apartment and $4,000 and up in cities like Mountain View and Palo Alto, people with good jobs, good credit, ready to put down roots, they still need help to help compete for a home. And so that's where we come in. We make a loan to cover up to 20% of the purchase price to cover their down payment. And those are the types of individuals and families we want to invest in our community. And since we started, we've helped make over 2,400 loans to first-time home buyers, the largest group being teachers and educators. And then finally, to address homelessness, the Housing Trust makes grants to pay for security deposits to help homeless people move into safe, stable, and affordable homes. We work in partnership with homeless service agencies who are the ones that are on the front line of the crisis. Once a caseworker is able to locate an apartment and a willing landlord, and they can ensure that the homeless person or family they're helping can afford the rent and access services, we then come in and cover up to $2,500 for their security deposit and their move-in costs. Because as we saw, what person who has been homeless for any period of time will have the money lying around or in the bank to pay for those startup costs to get their security deposit, to get their utility, their first and last. So through our homeless programs, we've helped 6,000 people move or stay out of homelessness. But for us, just as innovative as our impact of our programs is the other side, how we raise the money. And this highlights the important role that we and other local housing trust funds play in the overall affordable housing landscape. All local housing trust funds have one thing in common. We exist to bring in new resources to our respective communities that aren't already there to create more affordable housing. According to the Center for Community Change, there are 34 local housing trust funds throughout California, and each housing trust fund operates locally to best serve its community's needs. And many support both the housing development process, assisting first-time home buyers, and also homelessness. We come in different forms. Some local housing trust funds are nonprofit loan funds like us. Some are joint power authorities. Some are programs of the city and county government. At least 3 of us, the Housing Trust of Silicon Valley and the Housing Trust Fund of San Luis Obispo and the Housing Trust Fund of Santa Barbara County, are also community development finance institutions, and we're certified by the U.S. Department of Treasury and also the California Department of Insurance, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. Local housing trust funds also, you find them they're located everywhere in the state, but you also find them in higher cost areas where moderate income housing is a particular challenge. For the Housing Trust, we've always seen our unique role in a job-rich and high-cost region like Silicon Valley is to help bridge the gap and find constructive ways for the private sector, who have traditionally not been investors in affordable housing, to come in and help impact the issue. For example, to help fund our affordable rental housing loans, the Housing Trust creates loan pools of investors who provide lending capital to us, which we use to make loans, and then when we get paid back by affordable housing developers, we can return that capital to our community investors with a small return. So initially, our high-tech employers, like I mentioned before, made philanthropic grants and donations to the Housing Trust. Nowadays, more often, we're working with companies like Cisco and Technology Credit Union as actual investors and participants in our loan pools. And for the Housing Trust, one important tool we have to help us bridge the gap between the traditional affordable housing world and the world of corporate and individual investors is our Standard & Poor's rating. Last spring, the Housing Trust became the first nonprofit community development finance institution in the country to get rated, and we got rated AA- from a major national rating agency. So with this, we've been able to demonstrate to potential investors who aren't familiar at all with affordable housing programs how this becomes a double bottom line investment, one that's fiscally prudent while at the same time helping us create an important social impact. With this credit rating, we also have the opportunity to greatly scale our programs to meet more of the need in our community. For us and other nonprofit local housing trust funds, 3 state programs are very important to us, and they directly impact and assist our work. And we want to urge the state Senate to look at how we can fully fund these programs at every opportunity. The first is the Matching Local Housing Trust Fund program. This was originally funded out of Prop 46 in 2002 with $25 million, and this program made grants available to local housing trust funds on a matching basis. In 2006, there was another round with the passage of Prop 1C, and the state awarded $32 million for this program, with half of that going to existing local housing trust funds and half to help incentivize new housing trust funds. And then in 2013, Assemblymember Rich Gordon passed AB 532, which allowed these funds to get allocated in one last round of funding for both new and existing housing trust funds. In total, just over 40 awards were made throughout the state, all of which were leveraged 100 to 200% with other private or new local funding sources. This program is out of money. It doesn't have any current funding, and we'd urge the legislature to look at ways to find new or reallocate existing unspent funds for this very competitive program. The second state program is the CalHome program. By using CalHome, we're able to make down payment assistance loans to lower income buyers. These are families earning up to 80% of the area median income, who otherwise would have no opportunity to be a homeowner in our region. CalHome represents the last source of funding available entirely for low-income buyers, but hasn't had a new round of funding since 2014, and is among a variety of programs that need additional funds at HCD. The third program is the California Organized Insurance Network, or COIN, tax credit administered by the State Department of Insurance. The COIN tax credit provides a 20% tax credit to California taxpayers, particularly insurance companies, who make 0% interest loans to CDFIs to help us invest in low and moderate income communities. The Housing Trust has received 2 allocations of COIN tax credits in the past, which helped us address the foreclosure crisis and also to create new multifamily rental homes. And from the time the COIN program was started in 1997 to 2015, the state has awarded $57 million of COIN tax credits, which in turn have supported $285 million in direct private investments for community development, including a lot of that going to affordable housing. So in conclusion, I just want to reiterate that local housing trust funds play a critical and innovative role in the affordable housing financing landscape by addressing both rental housing and home ownership and serving a variety of incomes, including very low, low, and moderate income households. We can also help address what's often referred to as the missing middle, be able to create innovative programs to assist people who make too much for traditional affordable housing programs, but not enough to afford the high cost of housing. Housing trust funds meet local needs, oftentimes in high-cost areas, and serve as an important bridge and vehicle for private companies, employers, and non-traditional sources of capital to invest in our state's toughest affordable housing challenges. Thanks, and I'd be happy to answer questions at the end.